when I look back on it, she really invested in technology early, which I think helped me not be afraid of technology.
Hmm.
She had Macs before people had Macs, and then people before her were doing recording and transcription with the normal stenographer machine that you would see in movies and stuff, which is like a very few character machine.
Yeah.
And she started recording basically with a 4-track cassette recorder with like multiple mics and stuff like that. And so she had a realistic recording, like an actual recording, instead of just like somebody's interpretation of what was said. And she was able to really increase the turnaround time by just using technology for how long people were waiting for transcripts. So she became the biggest in the Atlantic provinces for her company and got to travel all over the world with lawyers. And yeah, I grew up like watching her just kick ass, basically.
That's so cool. Hey, folks, and welcome to this latest episode of the Small Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Raph, co-founder of EC, the digital product studio building technologies for a more sustainable future. And today we have another amazing guest. She is the CEO and co-founder of Sidedoor, a platform that brings together artists, hosts, venues, everything you need for a musical performance to come together. They allow artists and individuals who want to host a show in their living room to come together. They also work with venues, and they have a ticketing platform to make it all come together into actual shows that you can pay for to support the artists in your community or people who are touring and coming through. It's a really, really wonderful platform, and it's doing something that I care a lot about, which is making the arts sustainable, making sure that artists can make a living and continue to exist and make the cool things that they do, make us feel things and create stuff that we can enjoy. She is Laura Simpson, and I learned a lot about her today, even though I've known her for a while, and I think it's really valuable. So enjoy. Hey, Laura.
Hello.
How's it going?
It's going great. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. Thanks for joining me on the Small Tech Podcast.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
So kind of just gonna dive into it. I want to get a sense of your background. How did you end up starting Sidedoor? How did you end up where you were career-wise or life-wise that led you into this journey?
Yeah, I guess I was like in a mid-career crisis where I was working at a nonprofit that supported artists and helped them find funding for their marketing and touring in Canada. And I just found like I sort of hit a wall both with like the advancement of what I could do in that organization and also just feeling like what I was doing wasn't as effective as I wanted it to be. I just found like there's still so many barriers for artists that weren't getting acknowledged. And on the side, I had been working in live music quite a bit, like doing all sorts of different kinds of jobs, whether it's like working at the local jazz festival, doing artist services for big artists, or also just presenting shows in my own house. So that was sort of my deep love, was to work in live music. And so that was the main thing that I knew I wanted to do. But really it took a trip to California, which was sort of my like work and parental sabbatical for 4 months. I lived in Los Angeles, where I started to really crystallize things. And honestly, it still took a year and a half after that to really get started with Sidedoor. So it was like this slow evolving process of just kind of stumbling along until I came across the right way to do things.
So was it something like you were aiming for this, or did it just kind of, you knew that you wanted to help artists, but you weren't sure exactly what form that would take, or?
Yeah, the shape of it was really abstract for a long time. And I never worked in tech. Like basically I had turned our funding program that was paper-based into an online, like free software-based program. Like that was the closest thing I came to, working in tech, was like making things more efficient using free technology.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had no idea what being a startup would mean or raising money. Like I literally went to Volta, which is our tech incubator here in town, to hang out and find a developer like it was a singles bar, which I always joke about. I was just kind of like waiting around to meet people in tech to learn what they did. But it was, yeah, when I was there, I was like, oh, you should maybe join an accelerator program that will help really give your abstract thoughts some shape. So that's what I did.
How was that? What was the accelerator?
It was really good. It was called Propel, still in existence, and it was in person in those days. It's virtual now. But I found a lot of value in just kind of being in a cohort of other founders, knowing that they were kind of stumbling along as well.
Yeah.
And they brought enough folks in to meet with us to give us guidance that helped to answer some questions in my head. And some of those people they brought in actually became our early investors, which was really nice.
Awesome. What was the most like surprising or unusual thing when you sort of stepped into this tech world, coming from your background?
I found the tech and business world language really hard. Like I found people speaking codes and it's shorthand for them, but especially the acronyms, I still Google things while I'm in meetings.
Yeah, totally. The
Yeah.
KPIs and I don't know, shred and all of these fun
All of it.
things. Yeah.
And it's like people want to have a secret language.
It
So,
is, yeah, it's so true.
and I used to work in journalism where it was like really beat into us. Like you need to speak in plain language. Like I worked in radio. So it was like, how do you put things into 30-second bites so that anyone can understand? So that was the biggest shift I found, honestly.
Yeah, that background in journalism and radio, I mean, that feels, of course, like very tied, at least the radio, to music. But journalism, how does that fit into your way of thinking and operating in this space?
Um,
Or does it?
Customer discovery is a lot easier.
Okay. Yeah.
Like asking strangers constantly, or even our users, like just talking to people and being really curious and asking good questions comes really naturally to me. I have no problem doing that, so that's really helpful. And being a journalist kind of means you're a generalist, so that you just learn about different things constantly, and so you
Yeah.
have little bites of experience in different worlds, and that helps you be empathetic to when you're approaching different things. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it did really help.
Awesome. Before Side Door, did you ever do anything sort of entrepreneurial, or was this kind of your first shot at like building something, an
Oh yeah.
organization or product or whatever?
No. I mean, my lemonade stand was really, really good. Like really, like I was in a busy street and I used to go out at the like time when there was so much traffic because it was just like a log jam at 5 o'clock, and I
Yeah.
sold loads of lemonade, and then I added different products and stuff like that. I did that for a long time. No, but seriously, I did. My first real company was I started a company right out of college that was called Document, which just was sort of what would be the equivalent, ancestry.com. Like, so it was pre that. And so I would interview people and document their stories and their lives for different purposes, for like retirements, for memorials, for, all these different occasions.
Yeah.
And I would put it into a hardcover book, and it was sort of like putting it together with real pictures and stories, and just like kind of having this like artifact that is your life at a certain point in time. And I did that for a couple of years and really loved it. And then I also had an artist services company right before Side Door began. So that actually is just winding up now. I passed it along to my partner, and she's been running it for this whole time for I think 9 years now. But she's just at a point where she's moving on to other things. And then I also ran an off-grid camp for adults for 2 years. So yeah, I've had a few different ventures.
Yeah.
If you'd call it.
That's awesome. So lemonade stand, amazing. I love that. So I guess entrepreneurship and building things from the ground up has always been sort of in your.
Yeah, my mom was a small business owner, so
Cool.
I worked in her business growing up. Her business was in our basement, and so I learned how to do everything from managing their garbage to deliveries to accounting to like
That's so cool.
calling on accounts that were not paid on time to like doing the actual job of like recording and transcription, which is the company. And
Oh,
yes,
cool.
so all sorts of different things.
Interesting. So, also, I guess working with audio from an early age.
Yeah, I mean, when I look back on it, it really like she really invested in technology early, which I think helped me not be afraid of technology.
Hmm.
Like she had Macs before people had Macs, and then people before her were doing recording and transcription with like the normal stenographer machine that you would see in movies and stuff, which is like a very few character machine.
Yeah.
And she started recording basically with a 4-track cassette recorder with like multiple mics and stuff like that. And so she had a realistic recording, like an actual recording, instead of just like somebody's interpretation of what was said. And she was able to really increase the turnaround time by just using technology for how long people were waiting for transcripts. So she became the biggest in the Atlantic provinces for her company and got to travel all over the world with lawyers. And yeah, I grew up like watching her just kick ass, basically.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Um, so actually, you bring up the Atlantic provinces. Is there, do you find, okay, so you went to LA. Did you go basically from Halifax to LA and back to Halifax or
Yeah.
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 Do you find that there's anything particular to the Atlantic provinces, to Halifax, that helped you or that made it like a particularly like suitable environment for a company like Side Door? And yeah, how do you think about the relationship with LA and the time that you spent there?
Yeah. I mean, I think being from the East Coast, we're pretty necessarily laid back about things.
Yeah.
It just, that's a mindset that I think some people would think is a deterrent or a bad thing in business, but I think it really helps you not get too anxious or wound up about things and kind of ride out the storm a little bit. And the other thing is that you're naturally, I think, out here curious and interested in meeting people and talking to people and really getting to know them, which I think also makes you really good at sensing a good vibe and like understanding how people operate. And honestly, LA had a bit of that. Like there's a lot of like checking out each other's vibes and like, like our first investor in our seed round is definitely like somebody who we got along with really well, just because we ended up talking about music and he's still a big music fan. And a lot of our investors and their partners are like that. Like we get each other. So I think that's an important thing that I sort of picked up living out here.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Hmm.
So your co-founder Dan is on the other side of the country,
Yeah.
here in Vancouver. How did you connect and decide, let's start this thing together?
Yeah, I mean, the music community is pretty small, but I did not know Dan before this.
Okay.
But I do the thing which I still tell people all the time is a good tactic is if you have an idea about something, just keep telling people about it and eventually it'll come true.
Yeah, I love it.
uh, Not that I'm not working at the same time, but like I would tell people about my desire to do something in small DIY shows in that world.
Yeah.
And I had been talking to my friend Rich O'Coin, who's local artist from here, and he had known that Dan was working on a house concert network, and so he connected us. It's so funny I'm telling this because I literally just saw him at the lake yesterday when we were
Nice.
starting. It's still a small community, but yeah, he introduced us actually when I was still in LA, and so we started corresponding online just about our ideas, which were still pretty loose. And then he was doing a performance with the symphony here in Halifax. And when he was here, we met up. And I tell this story because it's fun, but like we met up for brunch at the Lord Nelson and had a really nice, like, just brainstorm about what we wanted to see in the world. Not necessarily like how we could, like, not the shape of it necessarily, but like what we both desired, like shared values, shared goals, and that sort of thing. And we started to come around to an idea. And at the end, he's like, I think we should do this. And I think you should be the captain of this ship. And I was just like, just so excited because when I had thought about it before, it's scary to think about things alone. But when you understand that there's super value in, especially somebody like Dan, who's so well loved in the community, having his endorsement, but also his outreach power to join forces. And it's just proven, like, we've been through the ringer and back, and it's just incredibly wonderful to have somebody in your corner who knows exactly what you're going through. It's just to go through it with you, really.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is there anything you would, I don't know, like advice you would give someone, a new founder, on how to decide, like, okay, let's actually like do this thing together? When do you decide, let's formalize the thing and like actually build a product or a company or whatever?
I mean, I'm pretty big on managing expectations really
Okay.
clearly. Recently, somebody gave me that phrase, which is clear is kind.
Okay.
Like, if you
Yeah.
can clearly define what your expectations and hopes and dreams are. And in my case, I was really wanting to put it in writing. And so, like,
Mm-hmm.
early on, I think I came back home and I wrote up an MOU.
Yeah.
I just was like, here's what I still have it. Like, here's what we want in this partnership. And
Yeah.
here's, you know, I ended up going back out to Vancouver after that. And when we were incorporated, I think right before we incorporated, and we followed up the MOU with like deal breakers and like roles and
Oh, that's good.
responsibilities, and like just kind of wrote it all down, but
Yeah.
like kind of figured out each other's edges and boundaries and needs and wants and just like no goes. And that changes sometimes over time, but like
Mm-hmm.
that's a really great baseline to start with.
I love that. I hadn't come across that as a way of setting things up. And yeah, I feel like that's really good. Really setting those expectations.
Yeah.
Um, you're both on different sides of the country.
Yeah.
So how have you managed that?
Zoom.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time on Zoom and phone calls. I'm often walking the dog while we're talking on the phone,
I love
just
it.
with the time difference.
Yeah.
Mhm. And he's got kids and I've got kids too. So there's, we're always juggling around the schedules. But, except for the pandemic, like I was sort of the operational founder and he was more the out in the world founder. That kind of set those roles pretty clearly. And it, we have Slack and all the other things, but I think that the main thing is always coming back to those roles and responsibilities and then using the tools we have like Slack and Zoom and everything like that to make it work. And we went together to San Francisco. We went together to South by Southwest, being at those places. He's come out here and toured, of course.
Yeah.
And we try to get together as often as we can. But it's funny, the Zoom relationship was pre-pandemic. And so when the pandemic happened, that's why we were so ready to jump on Zoom for online shows, because we knew exactly how it worked and we felt like we could tackle it.
I remember thinking, wow, they made this happen really fast. Yeah.
Really fast. But so was our initial product. Like, we were doing shows before we had a platform and before we had ticketing, and we had revenue before we had any proprietary product. That's the kind of approach we take. We're just like kind of build the plane as it's taking off kind of thing.
Yeah, I love that. I remember seeing that first setup with what was the tool you were using? It was like I forget what it was, but yeah, like this sort of project management slash
Oh, Podio.
Podio. There we go.
Well, so Podio is the software I used for the funding program. That's why I
Okay.
ended up bringing it up, because I'm like, I know how this works. And so, yeah, the early days of matchmaking, because it was like a CRM kind of.
Yeah.
So the early days of booking part of our platform where we help matchmake artists with spaces,
Hmm.
we would just get people, it's basically like getting them to fill out a form and then just like holding them up literally next to each other and be like, do these match? It wasn't, you had some filtering ability, but it was really good early days trial and error, because you kind of do it and then you'd be like, oh, well, I wanted to do this. It'd be so much faster if it would do this. But
Yeah.
like practicing with the free software was really helpful.
Yeah. The ability to test things out and just sort of work with what you got
Yeah.
is so useful and so important. Like, do you have any other stories of things that you just kind of like, all right, we're just going to try this out this way and see what happens?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I should say, like, I'm, again, not a technical person. Like, I
Yeah.
don't have like the resources and the knowledge to do like to make something myself. So I do have to rely on off the shelf stuff. So, I mean, I'm trying to think like we used Eventbrite for the early ticketing.
Nice. Yeah.
And we used like just different iterations of Stripe after that. And we were using Zapier to like put everything together. Zapier. I never know if people are like, is it Zapier or Zapier?
They used to have at the bottom of their site tiny little letters. They said, Zapier makes you happier. Yeah, or
Thank
something like
you.
that. Yeah.
Makes more sense. It's a Zap. So
Yeah.
that makes yeah, so like little tools like that would help stitch things together, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think, we still have a Facebook group
Yeah.
for the hosts to meet. We never put that in our platform. We're just like, everybody's on, all these people who are hosts, most of them are on Facebook. So let's
Yeah.
just leave them where they are and they can talk
Yep.
there,
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Is there anything, if you had to like think back to when this first got started, is there anything you would do differently? Or any advice you would give yourself?
It's really funny, but like definitely hindsight is 2020, but like we probably wouldn't still be in business if we hadn't raised venture capital.
Okay.
But we're at this point now where I'm like, all the investors are like, okay, this is going to be a slow burn.
Yeah.
Like we're finally catching up after the pandemic because we basically were going to a point with live shows, went online, had a huge bubble of success.
Yeah.
The online shows, raised our seed round during that time, and then had to basically start back from almost zero with live shows.
Yeah.
Pull everything apart, build it back up again, and then try to make it happen for live shows. So it's just been a really slow grind trying to get to, the scale that we really require to be successful. I don't think it's impossible, but it's just like, on the one hand, I'm like, we probably would have died if we didn't have venture capital.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the same time, like the pace at which we're able to go, like our industry is still pretty archaic and still slow and still relationships based and stuff like that. And people are very adverse to technology in the music industry. As much as they like their gadgets and their product. Like I was just at the National Independent Venue Association conference in New Orleans.
Yeah.
And I was sitting with a guy from a venue and a booking agent. And they were like, I wish we had something that would just like tell you when artists are all free, like when they want to tour, so that we could just access it and then we could just book them from like, like maybe we should start a spreadsheet or something. And I'm like, are you serious right now? Like I'm right here. I've built this, It was so frustrating. But like I think there's just still an aversion to learning something new. So you're constantly trying to make this thing that is technology as like dead easy as possible. Like people want it to be like Apple level easy, without Apple level investment. That's the challenge.
There's a bit of a disconnect there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess, yeah, that's the work.
That's the work.
Yeah. Nice. What's next?
Probably more travel. Like I'll be in and around the US a little bit this year and different parts of Canada. Like I said, relationship building is still a real thing. So I spend almost all my time with other music related people and groups. I don't really indulge in the tech community too much, honestly.
Yeah, that's fair.
Although I am now on the board of directors for Volta, which is nice. And like, I get to be a very different voice in that community. And then, we're actually starting out with a indie promoters program, which actually allows for more people to be our quote unquote boots on the ground for shows. And so we're rolling that out in Toronto. And then if it's successful, we'll be rolling it out in other cities. And it just means that there's more like human interface to making the shows, which again, as much as you're a tech company, we're in a people-based business. So we have to work around that.
Yep. Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Laura. Do you have a small tech product that you can think of on the fly that you want to plug?
Yeah, I guess I'm not allowed to choose my Fitbit, which has been helping with me with my sprint triathlon training. There is there's so many great local companies, and there was a company I actually just heard about on the radio this morning that I was really going to look into. So like early days knowing this, but they're called Carbon Run, and they basically help make the water better, like make rivers better, manage the fact that there's erosion and like pollution and that sort of thing. So I heard this clip on the radio about them, and I'm like, I love companies that combine real solutions for the earth, like, and addressing all the terrible things that are happening with climate change, and but also it's a carbon credit business, so that, you know, it's like giving those other companies like a way to feel a little bit better about not contributing to the environment. So yeah, I really get behind companies like that that are like either good for social, good for the environment, good for the heart.
Yep. I love it. Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. And
You're welcome. Thank you.
it was great talking to you.
You too.
Folks, that was my interview with Laura Simpson, CEO of Side Door. I really enjoyed chatting with her. I loved learning about her life, the way that she started working with her mom, her journey to California, the way that she worked with Dan to come together and build this company. So if you want to host a show in your living room or backyard, or you want to attend an amazing performance, head over to sidedooraccess.com and check out the amazing platform that they've built. If you enjoyed this podcast and you are not yet subscribed, head over to smalltechpodcast.com, where you can subscribe on any podcast app. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe here. It really helps us out. We're a small team, and every time someone clicks that button, it just really helps us out. And feel free to give us feedback. We're always learning, so let us know what we're doing well, what we're doing poorly. I'd love to improve this for you all. And if you're building something awesome that is having a positive impact on the world with technology, design, anything like that, I would love to talk to you. So let me know. Shoot us a message at hello@smalltechpodcast.com, or head over to the website. You'll find ways to contact us there. You can also find the newsletter, which you can sign up for at smalltechpodcast.com as well. And if you need help building technology, make sure to come find us at goec.io. That's goec.io. Let's have a chat. In the meantime, we all want to do something good in the world, so go out there and build something good, folks. I will see you in the next one. See ya.